Frankie here. Today I'm here with B-Boy Evol representing Brickhead Motion D to talk about experiences and knowledge on Airflares. A little bit of a preface here, Ernesto. So my impression is in like the past 10 years or so, Airflares seem to have kind of died down. It seemed like the first few jams I was ever going to, people were spamming them in the ciphers. Nowadays, not so much. Is this consistent at all with what you've seen?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. It was probably so saturated at that time that it's kind of like a hangover effect right now. And then plus that was an era of moves too. Also, with access to everything, all information now, and B-boys getting into the scene, kind of understanding that there's fundamentals that are important, musicality is important, and just being a complete B-boy is very important. So I think that's not most B-boys been focusing on. It's like a personal goal.
So how long have you been training this move now?
Let's see, I think I learned it in 2001, late 2000. And then on and off, especially recently, like the past 10 years, just trying to open my range and my vocabulary and getting better at the whole complete picture of the dance with fundamentals and all. It's a high maintenance move, it's a high risk move, whether it's like you can mess up very easily or you can just get really injured if your technique is not very good or you're practicing a lot on the mats that wear and tears your joints. There's different ways to do it, like whether you do it really high or kind of low or with a lot of whip or not so much whip. It all depends on what your next combination was before or after it.
Yeah.
Or what your goal is. Like if it's like really, I just want to stay up in the air and do a lot of technical air flare tricks, or you use a lot of momentum if you're just going to stay low on the floor. People like Shorty Brick and Epic, they had air flares pretty good. I can take what they're doing and try to implement it in my style air flare. So with Shorty, he would do a lot of he would just fly, so he would just stay really high. He did really high air flares, his hips were really high, his legs swing low, he was almost in a handstand position, right? So he could do a lot of technical tricks out of that, whether it's like air flares, hopping air flares, air flare 90 back into air flares. When I first saw the air flare, kind of resembled like an air swipe to me. I thought it was a swipe, dude didn't put his foot down and just did an air flare, right? And so it was a lot lower. When I got into it, I was kind of doing both. And so I would do it either really high, because I would practice a lot with Shorty. So I would either do it really high, just trying to keep up with him and all the tricks he was doing. But I was really good at ground power, so sometimes I would just keep my hips low and just go with the whip and just let it flow. I really wanted to talk about using your air flare in a dynamic way and being more creative with it. I was good at air flare, but at any given time I wasn't the best at combinations with the air flare, meaning like flare, air flare, flare, over and over and over, that type of like flying like a bird style. So I did footwork and I did a lot of ground power, so I had to find ways to use that to my advantage. It didn't have to be hard. It was usually easier for me to do it that way. And so I just want to get into like different ways you can go into the air flare and come out of the air flare that are not so typical. Maybe more so now because people are not really using air flares as typical as they used to. So these things were less common back in my day, but are more common now. A lot of times you don't want to just do the regular standard setup, right? You don't want to just hit your chops like this with no dynamics. It's cool. It's cool. It really depends on your air flare, right? When you do it very plain like that, it kind of shows like, does he have a really dynamic air flare? Does he have good swing? Does he have good technique? Right? So you're exposing that for the people to really see that, or you can dress that up out top, whatever, get groovy, and then hit this. Okay, just a simple setup like that. You can do air swipe. Okay, air swipe. The setup is like this. Air swipes air flare. That one's a little harder. So typically when I do that, I like to go down into groundwork. So if I do like that, right, I want to keep my hips really high. Hips really high, and so I lose a lot of that sexiness, that whip. But now I can slow it down when I catch. Okay, so now I catch a lot faster, and I can slow it down and really think about where I want to go after that. So from footwork, like a 6-step or something like that, Zulu spins. That one doesn't have a lot of whip. So a lot of that technique, if you're doing it from the floor, It's really learning how to get from the floor to a handstand. So if you're gonna do the 6-step, this will be the beginning. You can see where I focus on the hips, making sure the hips are really high, and then swinging that right hand out together with the hop. So they work together. They don't work together, you're lifting all your weight. That's where you get the loud hand. Sweeps. I like to do sweeps in and out of my power. So see what I'm saying? So yeah, air flare, you want to get into footwork. There's so many ways to do that. Really you want to fake like you're going into a flare and just let that momentum go like you're going to a flare and just put your feet down and run with it. And now run. Okay, let that momentum just keep it. I'm just going with the momentum. Those same techniques work for air flares into poses. Air flares into poses, you don't want momentum. So I wanted to talk about, I like to use for air flares, it's almost like a forward flare setup, right? So I'll go like that, and then I'll go into my air flare from that. And then just letting that go, and then carrying that momentum. Okay. So I would like to show you a high air flare and then a whip air flare that's kind of like in mid-level. High air flare is typically in a handstand position with your legs pointing down, but your hips are really high, just like almost directly on top of your shoulder, maybe a little off. Those are good for air flare combinations that stay up. Air flare 90, or even multiple air flares, air flare handhounds, air flare reverse 90s, or one-handed air flares. Also hopping air flares. That technique I had to adopt, I had to learn. It wasn't my natural way of learning the air flare. It's something that I saw a lot on YouTube and I saw a couple people in my crew doing. I'm gonna set up really high, almost in a handstand position, stick out my hips. So it's gonna kind of mimic this. So that's a high one, not a lot of whip, not very dynamic, but that's the best way for me to hit a pose afterwards to make sure that I can stay up, right?
That 90's right there.
Yeah, it's right there, yeah. I didn't really have to change the hips so much. I didn't have to bring the hips up all of a sudden, and I didn't have to like worry about momentum throwing me off. Let's go through a couple air flares that are lower, a little more dynamic, have a lot of speed. So those are harder to combo with, but are funner to do. But I can only go down usually after that. You throw across your chest more. But versus like when you're doing the high air flare, you throw behind your ear. And if you want more air time, you throw across your chest. But also, now you're gonna fall faster. Versus the other one, hips are really high, you throw behind the ear, you throw behind the ear, and so you catch. You can stall, you can move the legs however you want. So sometimes I would do a hand hop, just to make sure that my hips are high. I used to go like this, before I go down, right? This is just practice, not at the battle. I would do that. I would do that just to make sure that this is the form I want to be in. And then I'll kind of just like stay like that, right?
Anything else you can think of in terms of instruction you want to give today?
So air flare is a very high risk move and it can cause a lot of injuries because you generate so much whip and you're almost upside down. And there's like a commitment problem for a lot of people once they let go. So just be careful, understand when you should stop working on it. Don't spend too much time on it. Come back to it. Be careful with the injuries. Warm up your wrist pretty good. Warm up your shoulders really good. Make sure your shoulders, like you got some decent posture. I didn't realize that until later. But if you got like, my shoulders are kind of like this, and I think that's what adds to the wear and tear, right? I used to do a lot of push-ups, not a lot of back workout. So you want to make sure that you're doing some good therapy. There's some very basic therapies that you can pick up on YouTube, just shoulder mobility, and just look that stuff up and just do those exercises just to maintain longevity and prevent injuries and heal properly when you do get injured.
B-Boy Evol, Chicago Brickheads, and Motion D. We're just going to wrap it up. Peace.